Imu spent 800 years erasing people from history, but there is one person on the planet that Imu once brought to him alive. Her name is Nefertari Vivi. She is of course the princess of Alabaster, and she has no devil fruit or army or even confirmed connection to any of the ancient weapons. Vivi spends her days reading the newspaper and following the Straw Hats from a distance, and as of the most recent chapter, she still doesn't know that Imu exists. She isn't aware of his name, and what's worse, she has no idea that he's the reason that her father never returned home. In chapter 1086, after Cobra was killed and Vivi escaped Merijo, Imu gave the 5 elders a single order regarding Vivi. He specifically told them to bring her to him, not kill her. One Piece is pointing everyone's attention somewhere else. Within chapter 1189, Imu is standing on Elbaf in person, coughing up blood because his body is barely able to survive being outside of Merijo. He's pinned Luffy to a tree using a sword that drains the life out of everything near it, and he's bestowed Gram onto Shepherd Summers and Longinus onto Rimoshifu Killingham. And Gaban's axes are the only thing that are keeping Luffy alive as of the end of the chapter. Shanks has been revealed to have told Loki that there's a king of the world sitting above the 5 elders, and that conquering the rest of the world is only preparation for a war that hasn't even started yet. Beneath Imu's desire to get Vivi, there's a woman in a photograph that Imu carries to his empty throne and refuses to cut apart, but we'll dive into that more later in the video. But you know who Imu would never send the 5 elders to drag back to Merijo? These are the individuals who are subscribed to the channel. Only 10% of the people who watch these videos are subscribed, so if you enjoy these One Piece theories and breakdowns, then hit the bell notification and the subscribe button for even more One Piece videos just like this. Everybody who learns the truth about Imu eventually ends up dead. Cobra learned it and was killed at the throne. Sabo had seen it, and the highest ranking people in the world government dropped everything to hunt him across the world. Wapol caught a glimpse of it through a peephole and has been running ever since, so for 800 years the rule has held without a single exception, as anyone who sees behind the curtain gets erased. And this was also true for Rox. He ended up being killed too. In terms of Vivi, the fandom will tell you that the world government wants Vivi dead, but that has never once been stated in the manga. There's no execution order for her anywhere, and the only standing instruction is Imu's order in chapter 1086 to retrieve her and deliver her to him personally. Now compare this to her father Cobra, who was the one who knew the dangerous information. Cobra was the one who had said out loud that the Nefertari family carries the will of D, and he was impaled for it in that very room. Vivi knows almost nothing by comparison. She wasn't there when it happened. Wapol has refused to tell her what he saw, and she doesn't even know that Imu is real. Going by this logic that the world government has followed for 800 years, Vivi is the easier loose end to remove, and she'd never see it coming. But for some reason, Vivi is the one that Imu wants to keep alive. You could argue that she is an asset to him rather than a threat. If you go back to chapter 906, a cloaked figure walks into a frozen chamber underneath Pangaea Castle carrying a stack of wanted posters, with Luffy's among them as the figure stands in front of a giant straw hat. In chapter 908, within the Room of Flowers, Imu takes a blade to the posters and photographs that he singled out. Luffy's, Blackbeard's, and Shirahoshi's photographs get cut, but there are 4 faces that Imu picked out. 3 of them were impaled, and the 4th belongs to Vivi, and her photo is left completely intact as he carries it in his hand to the empty throne. Following this, there's a meeting with the Gorosei who bow and ask Imu to name the light that needs to be extinguished from history, and he's holding her picture while they ask him. The manga doesn't go as far as to confirm that it's Vivi's light that needs to be extinguished, but this part is inferred by fans. because it's worth noting that he is holding that photograph of Vivi in his hand when the question is asked to him. Chapter 1084 ends on Imu sitting alone on the throne and saying one word, which is Lily. In chapter 1116, while Vegapunk is broadcasting to the whole world and the sea levels are rising, Imu stands in the flower room and stares at a large portrait of Nefertari di Lily. This is the queen who ruled Alabaster 800 years ago, and Oda's drawn her to resemble Vivi almost exactly. That portrait is hanging there completely undamaged. Then there's also Cobra's letter, which has been passed down the Nefertari family for 800 years. It opens by instructing the reader to protect the poneglyph, and it closes with a line about raising the flag of the dawn to the world. And it's signed Nefertari D. Lily. Now this letter doesn't contain Imu's name. Cobra only works out who he was speaking to because he overhears the 5 elders addressing him as Imu Sama. Anyone claiming that Lily's letter named Imu has got this part wrong, and it matters because the gap between what fans remember and what's actually going on in the manga is where a lot of bad One Piece theories stem from. So there's the mysterious giant frozen straw hat, Vivi's spared photograph, the untouched portrait of Nefertari D. Lily, the whisper of the name which belongs to the light that is next to be extinguished, and the order to bring in Vivi alive. These are some of the key mysteries that have yet to receive answers within One Piece, and since chapter 1189 dropped, they've stopped looking like 5 different theories, and they are now starting to look like 5 parts of one singular theory. We've known since chapter 907 that there are weapons that surround the empty throne. They were described as the pledges of the 20 kings who founded the world government and declared that the world would never again be ruled by one person. The latest chapter reveals how these weapons form the mechanics of Imu's entire power base. Imu bestows Gram onto Shepherd Summers to fight Zoro. Summers explains what these blades actually are. They belong to the founding families. They were planted in front of the empty throne. Imu restores and summons them through the power of Omen, and he can also bestow them onto the living descendants of the kings who originally pledged them. Gram is the Shepherd family's heirloom. Longinus, the spear that Killingham receives, belongs to the Rimoshifu family. Via Omen, Summers is able to wield that sword exactly as Imu can. So every founding family's weapon is physically within Imu's possession, and he can reach back through an 800-year-old pledge to arm their descendants in the present day. Chapter 1084 reveals 20 kings founded the world government. There are only 19 weapons at the empty throne though. One founding line never planted a blade, and didn't swear the oath and relocate to Merijo to become celestial dragons. That family stayed behind in the desert, and they are the Nefertari family. The queen was Lily, and the last living heir of that bloodline is Vivi. If you line these facts together, Imu's system runs on the pledges of the founding kings, and there's exactly one founding bloodline whose pledge he's never been able to hold. It happens to be the very bloodline of the woman that he's been fixated on for 800 years. If you think about it, Omen clearly conjures far more than just those 19 weapons, as Imu pulls out pole arms, daggers, cannons, and abyss portals whenever he wants. So that missing 20th weapon is not a gap in his firepower, and he isn't any weaker because of lacking that one sword. Also, the manga doesn't even confirm if a weapon belonging to the Nefertari family even exists. And nothing really confirms that it could hurt him. The only thing that can hurt Imu and those under his control are Supreme Conqueror's Haki users. This theory isn't focused around the missing weapon from the Nefertari family, but instead it focuses on the missing oath. The Nefertari are the only founding family that didn't enter a contract with Imu. The empty throne is built on a very specific lie. The founding story is that no single person may rule the world, and that the 20 kings gave up their crowns, abandoned their kingdoms, and dissolved themselves into one class of world nobles so that power would sit in an empty chair forever. So within the world government's own logic, there's one bloodline left on the planet still holding a founder's claim that was never given up. The Nefertari family never agreed that the throne should stay empty. This gives Vivi a role beyond being a vessel or a bloodline sample. It makes her a claimant and a legitimate founding era alternative to the seat that Imu is sitting on. She is proof that the great consensus of the founding was never unanimous. This becomes genuinely dangerous to Imu the moment that the throne's existence becomes public knowledge, which is already starting to happen. Sabo carried what he saw back to the Revolutionary Army. Shanks has now put the phrase King of the World into Loki's head, so the secret is gradually leaking out there. This also helps to explain why Imu wants Vivi alive. A dead Vivi solves nothing for him and probably makes things worse, because killing the last Nefertari hands the world a martyr with a valid claim and and a name that the resistance can rally behind permanently. But if Vivi is captured and married into the system, or bounded by a pledge of her own, then the independence of the Nefertari bloodline stops existing. It's a similar method to what the world government has done in the past. We saw a version of this play out within Brook's flashback recently. With Imu, everything runs on formality. He uses pledges, covenants, and titles, and he's made a point to make the entire world believe that the throne he is sat on is in fact empty for over 800 years. For a ruler that is this obsessed with the forms of his own authority, an unresolved founding claim from one of the founding bloodlines is a crack in his foundational godhood. Nefertari Vivi will always be the founder who opposed him. Imu's able to possess people and he wears their bodies like a suit. We've seen it happen 3 separate times now. He possessed Jay Garcia's Saturn at God Valley, and Roger looked at what came out of him and called it a black monster. He possessed Marcus Mars roughly 62 years ago in order to walk into the Esperia Kingdom's throne room. And on Elbaf, he took Manmaya Gunko's body and fired Supreme King Haki through her before Ragnir's ice forced him out of it. When Imu's true form finally descended on Elbaf within chapter 1179, he arrived via an abyss and immediately collapsed to the ground coughing up blood because, as Summers puts it, Imu's body isn't meant to withstand the outside world. Ivankov has also theorized that Imu's eternal youth comes from the Opi Opi no Mi's perennial youth operation, which was performed on him at some point in the past. So Imu's somebody immortal, kept young but unable to walk on the surface in his own flesh. The real form of Imu seems to be failing. He appears to need bodies to move around in, and he prefers them to be young, royal, and rare-blooded. Lily had that face and Vivi has it now. So Vivi is the next body I would theorize that he intends to wear. When Imu wears somebody's body, he doesn't gain access to their devil fruit, and the ability stays out of his reach even while he's piloting them. So a body works more like a costume for him, and it's a way to fight in a place his own flesh can't survive. This leaves the vessel theory with one question, which is what a Nefertari body specifically offers him that a healthy young body wouldn't. Her resemblance to Lily explains why he'd want her face, but it doesn't explain why he'd need her blood. Every possession that we've seen runs through his covenant system. Saturn, Mars, and Gunko are all covenant bearers, and all of them accepted the deal that let him inside at some point. There is a theory that suggests that full body possession requires the deepest tier of covenant, and if that turns out to be true, then Imu can't simply grab Vivi off of the street and wear her. He'd need her inside the contract first, which means he'd need her to agree to it. Some fans have theorized that if Imu does end up taking over Vivi's body, then the final villain that Luffy faces could be wearing Vivi's face. In chapter 1186, when we finally see what happens at Esperia, we learned why the Manmaya girl was taken in the first place. Guro, her biological father, lets it slip that bipolar irises are extremely rare and that Imu values them. He then starts to explain that he himself was unable to awaken something, but that perhaps Shuri can, and Imu cuts him off mid-sentence before he can finish saying what that something is. This interruption is deliberate on Oda's part. There appears to be a power sleeping within certain bloodlines, waiting for the right heir to wake it up, and Imu will destroy an entire kingdom over a child who may be carrying it. King Reuven refused to hand Shuri over, and Imu personally ordered Esperia to be wiped out for it. In chapter 1155, when a young Roxy Zebek broke into the Room of Flowers 56 years ago, Gunko was already standing there as Imu's personal attendant. She's been at his side without aging for around 6 decades. This is a princess who was stolen from her homeland with rare eyes. She's been kept young and close to Imu, and she's in reserve for whatever might eventually awaken within her. It may be that he's waiting for these bloodlines to reawaken something that the world hasn't seen since the Void Century. Whatever Lily did during the Void Century, which was scattering the poneglyphs across the entire planet in a way Imu himself suspects was a deliberate sabotage rather than than an accident. She managed to do this by using something. There is a theory that the Nefertari are connected to the ancient weapon Uranus in the same way that Shirahoshi is connected to Poseidon, and that Imu needs Vivi in order to access it. The honest counter to that is that the weapon Imu used on the Luzia, the one that is powered by the Mother Flame, is widely believed to be an ancient weapon already, and it quite possibly could be Uranus. Now it's worth looking at the parallels between Gunko and Vivi. Oda reveals exactly what Imu does with a princess that he's decided he needs. Parallels are pretty striking. We have a princess of a kingdom built around music, and a princess of a kingdom built on sand. A nation destroyed by an engineered crisis, and a nation that nearly was, because the weapon crocodile used in Alabaster was the rain itself, as he manufactured a drought using dance powder in order to break the country apart from the inside. Imu was responsible for the deaths of Gunko's father as well as Vivi's father. Gunko was taken, renamed, and her memories were erased as she became an immortal attendant. So via Gunko, we have a solid idea of what Imu wants to do with Vivi once he catches her. There is also hope in this scenario because Brook is currently trying to reach Gunko. Her memories cracked Imu's control once already within chapter 1173, as she broke free long enough to release the Straw Hats and tell Brook to run before Imu seized her again. Imu was furious about it and he attacked Brook directly while demanding to know how he was connected to her. Gunko's now being thawed out of Ragnir's ice, and Brook has told the crew he believes that she was being controlled the entire time and that she's like a daughter to him. So Brook saving Gunko may be a rehearsal for the Straw Hats saving Vivi if Imu catches her. There's a reading of the portrait that Imu stares at, which is that you don't stare with longing at a picture of yourself. You do that with someone you lost or someone who beat you. Vivi wears the face of Lily. She's a living reminder of the one refusal Imu was never able to reverse. This also kills the theory that Imu is Lily. This was a pretty big theory in 2023. Chapter 1086 ended it when Ivankov named him as Saint Nerona Imu, meaning Imu existed as his own separate person among the first 20. The Gorosei also brand the Nefertari as traitors, which makes no sense if their god king was one of them. Imu is an actual Japanese word. It's a verb which means to shun, to loathe, or to avoid. The kanji carries associations with mourning and death anniversaries, so he's named himself after abhorrence and grief. Vivi comes from the Latin root for living, which is the same root sitting inside vivid, revive, and survive. So the underlying thing that calls itself mourning has fixated on the one girl whose name means alive. Lily is the funeral flower, as lilies are what we lay on the dead, and his private sanctuary happens to be a room full of them. And Arabaster comes from alabaster, which is the pale stone the Egyptians carved into tombs and burial jars. So the kingdom is named after funeral stone, and its royal duty for 800 years has been guarding a tomb. So we have a mourning god, a funeral flower, a tomb kingdom, and one name in the middle of all of it that means alive. The real Queen Nefertari, who was the wife of Ramses II, was described by him as the one for whom the sun shines. In a story where the sun god is the liberator and Imu is the darkness that replaced it, Oda named the family that walked away from him after the woman for whom the sun shines. There's also a genuine ancient Egyptian town in the Nile Delta whose name transliterates to Imu, and its temple inscriptions honor a goddess as the mistress of Imu. Some have also theorized that Vivi is Imu's final human attachment. It's the final piece of feeling left inside something that wants to be a god. This theory states that Imu will eventually kill Vivi personally in order to sever this human attachment. For now, his order is to bring her in alive, but Oda could surprise all of us by having Imu kill Vivi himself. Also, Imu has a habit of refusing to see the people standing in front of him for who they are. He calls Luffy Joy Boy, he refers to Rocksteady Zebek as Davy Jones, he calls Loki Nidhogg. He looks at a living person and sees the ancient opponent whose will that they inherited. So the photograph of Vivi in the flower room functions as a picture of Lily pretty much. So there are a few things that we need to look out for in the upcoming chapters of One Piece. Vivi doesn't know Imu exists, while Luffy's side of of the world now does. So watch out for the moment that Vivi learns who ordered her father's death, and when she finds out that the king of the world has been keeping a photograph of her. It's going to be a pretty huge emotional moment whenever it happens. But in chapter 1130, when Luffy's Gear 5 photograph ran in the World Economy Journal, there was an X drawn on his arm, which is the exact farewell mark the crew shared with Vivi back in chapter 216. Robin notices it immediately, and fans have immediately started theorizing about it. While it's not stated within the manga, but it could be that Vivi placed this X there through Morgan's newspaper as a signal to the crew. If that's right, then she's actively trying to reach them. The second thing to watch is Gonko waking up. Whatever she says when she opens her eyes will tell us how much of her was ever truly gone, and whether if Imu's control requires a victim's buried consent in order to keep working, or whether if it simply overwrites someone completely. This single moment will help us to understand just what he plans to do with Vivi. The third thing to look out for is the way in which a lot of this could be proven wrong. We've never been told that a Nefertari weapon exists. We've never been told that possession requires a covenant, and the biggest unanswered question underneath all of this is why Lily refused to go to Merijo in the first place, which Saturn said was lost to the annals of history. Whenever Oda answers this, half of what's been argued here either clicks into place or it falls apart. Chapter 1190 releases this week, and it's expected to open on Gaban standing between Imu and Luffy. If anything involving Alabaster, Lily, or that missing plaid surfaces over the next few weeks, then we'll know exactly where it fits in the theories that we've discussed. We've now reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. Why do you think Imu needs Vivi alive? Is it her body, her bloodline, her claim to the empty throne, or is it still about Lily after all of these years? Do you think Vivi is carrying something that hasn't awakened yet? And what do you think happens on the day that she finally learns the truth about Cobra's death? Do let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments, and if there's anything that I've forgotten to mention, then please do let me know. And lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this one, and I look forward to seeing you in my next One Piece video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.